Hey, you got kids. This is module 12. 12 is in macro, section 3, and we're talking about unemployment today. So, as you're looking at unemployment, a couple things about unemployment. First of all, we have to look at a few things here, some definitions. So, one definition is, well, who's actually employed? And so, people that are holding a job, whether it's part time or full time, those people are technically employed, right? Not too difficult. Unemployed, though, is a little bit more difficult because it's people who are actively looking for work but not employed. So if you stop looking for work, then technically you're not unemployed anymore. You're because you stopped looking. But as soon as you start looking, now you're technically unemployed. So it's an interesting thing to think about in terms of who is unemployed. Now, there's some characteristics here or some categories sort of underneath this employed unemployed situation. One of them is a discouraged worker, right? So the discouraged workers are those don't have a job and no longer look. And that person is not counted as unemployed at all. They're part of a larger group, which is like a marginally attached worker, like a person who's kind of sort of attached to the workforce. They want to work most of the time, but they're just sick of looking. They've given up. It's too hard, or something is a barrier there. They become just disgruntled with the whole process. So therefore, those people are discouraged workers. Underemployed workers, they do have a job. They work part time. Maybe they want to be full time, something like that. They are not counted as unemployed, even though they're not maybe working up to what they could be working. Okay. The labor force is the sum of all the employed and unemployed people. So when you look at this, Bureau of Labor Statistics keeps good track of all these numbers. You have to report like, hey, this many applications for unemployment kind of thing that came in. This is how many people are looking for work. So when you look, these are the civilian unemployment rate since the year 2000. So you can see in 2000 here, we had kind of a higher unemployment rate, started growing a little bit, 6.1%. And then about 2003, it started to kind of tip over. Now unemployment's going down, but we're still in the like fives, fours. And then of course, right here, we get like the Great Recession, right? We get the end of George Bush's presidency and then the beginning of Barack Obama. The whole economy is going to like fall apart with some of the things like they deregulated the banks and the banks started handing out money to anybody, and then people who couldn't afford houses bought them, and it was terrible. We almost lost the whole economy. We'll focus on that later in the semester, but super crazy time. Anyway, unemployment skyrockets all the way up here, 9.9%, 10% unemployment. Remember, full employment's anywhere from like 4 to 6, so 10% is like, woof. And then this is Barack Obama's presidency now, starting like right in here, right? Deals with the aftermath of the Great Recession. And slowly but surely, this all ticks down until you get right in here. So now we have President Trump, 4.7, 4.3. We're getting down to like, look at this, into the threes, 3.7, 3.8. I mean, crazy low numbers of unemployment, 3.5. And then what happens? Oh, yeah, we get COVID, right? And now all of a sudden you see like, whoo, up here, May of 2020, we get 13% unemployment. That's insane. Now, have we recovered since then? Oh, it was all the way up April, all the way up to 14.7%. We have recovered down here. We're at like 6.7% as of November. And you'd think that as the vaccine rolls out and people are going back to work and people are then going back to restaurants and that kind of stuff, that whole entertainment industry that's been laid off, those people all get back to work, and you'd think this number would come right back down into the like fours, probably where it should be. All right. So they do keep track of all that stuff. Pretty crazy to see. Now, a couple of things that they're going to want to know in terms of like the AP test or just like in general measuring your economy. What is the labor force participation rate? So how many people are participating in your economy here? So labor force participation rate is the labor force, again, you're employed and unemployed, divided by the population age 16 and older. That's what we're going to go with. Then you multiply that by 100, you get how many people are participating in your economy. Your unemployment rate is then, okay, well, what percent of those people in the labor force are not working? So we're going to take the number of unemployed workers and we're going to divide that by the labor force itself, and then we're going to get our unemployment number. Okay? When you think about unemployment and whatnot, there is a Okins law here, which tells us that for every 1% increase in unemployment, your real GDP decreases by 2%. So when you think about that, unemployment is a big measure in the economy simply because if people aren't working, they don't have money to consume, right? And then if people aren't working, that means there's not as many people making things. So it all kind of adds up, and unemployment or employment, either way of looking at it, it's a big deal. So your economy can kind of flatline if all of a sudden people don't have jobs. So a couple quick problems. Here's one. You can just push pause if you want and try to do this one on your own. We'll do it here for you. So calculate the labor force participation rate. Well, remember, the labor force participation rate is the labor force divided by the population. So when I look at these numbers, my labor force is 100,000. Whoops. And then I'm going to divide that by my population of 200,000. So my labor force participation rate is going to be 50%. All right. For number 2 there, calculate the number of unemployed people. Okay, well, how do I get my number of unemployed people? Well, I have to find the number that are unemployed, and then I have to take that number of unemployed people and divide it by the labor force. So in this case, I'm going to say, okay, or that's my percentage rate. My fault. The number of just unemployed people is what it's asking for. So if I have 70,000 people working full-time, 20,000 people working part-time, so that's 90,000 people, and my labor force is 100,000. So I have 100,000 people minus 90,000 that are working. That means, what do I have left? Calculate the number of unemployed. It's got to be 10,000. Okay? So I was jumping ahead of myself a little bit. Calculate the unemployment rate. Well, the unemployment rate. Now what do I have to do? I have to take my unemployed people. So that's 10,000 people, right? Oops, not 100. 10,000 people. And divide it by my labor force. And my labor force is 100,000. So in this case, what is my unemployment? It would be 10%. So these are the kinds of things you're gonna have to be able to do to take like some of these bigger numbers here and be like, okay, well, which one do I need? And then do a little math, not too difficult, right? And then get yourself a percent. Here's another example. This would be like one that, I don't know, we could do and group it as a class, but you could pause it here and then see if you can figure it out, right? We wanna know what is the size of the labor force, what is the labor force participation rate, and what is the unemployment rate off those numbers. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find what is the size of the labor force. Well, the labor force is unemployed plus employed, right? So labor force is unemployed plus employed. So when I'm looking at the labor force here, I'm going to take my unemployed people of 2 million, and I'm going to add my employed people of 8 million, and I'm going to find my labor force is 10 million. Okay. The second one, so this is like A here. So for part B, it says, what is the labor force participation rate? Well, my labor force participation rate, remember, is the labor force divided by the population. So in this case, my labor force is going to be 10 million people, right? So 10 divided by, what is my population? My population, it says 16 over 40 million. So this one should be 25%. And last but not least, what is the unemployment rate? Well, the unemployment rate is unemployed divided by the labor force, right? So in this case, my unemployed people, it tells me 2 million. And my labor force, we already know, is 10 million. So this should be 20%. So that's how you go about doing those questions. And again, it just is, what are they asking you? And sometimes it's a little tricky because you might have to, if it's looking for labor force and they don't give you the labor force, then you're going to have to add, the employed and unemployed people together to get it. So as long as you know what they're talking about and kind of have those definitions down, it's not too big of a deal. They're just seeing what you know. Why is this significant? Well, like we said before, it is an indicator, right? How's your economy doing? When you start looking at it, does it overstate maybe the true level of unemployment? Is unemployment, it never really falls to zero. There's always people who are graduating from college that haven't got a job yet. There's a person who just quit their job because they're sick of it and they haven't found another job yet. So, all that kind of stuff, it's going to be, that's why we would say full employment is going to be somewhere between 4 and 6%. Like, sometimes do we look at unemployed workers and it's understated? Well, what about all those people who've just got sick of it and don't look anymore? Those discouraged workers out there. Those people used to be maybe a part of the economy and now they're not. So if we don't count them, what is that saying? I mean, they might have wanted a job at one point in time. They just got sick of it. So maybe you're not even looking at the true number of unemployed people because we don't count that group. So as you look at it, even the underemployed people, like somebody who maybe is working part-time or a job maybe that is unsuited to what their skill set is simply because they can't find a job that they want that could use their skills in the best possible way. So when you're looking at demographics for people that are unemployed, the overall rate, if that's like 4.7%, look at it from what if you're young, like a teenager type person, right? What if you're a minority? Like, what are the different rates? And they calculate all that in there. You can look at male, female unemployment rates, all sorts of stuff, and then kind of say, well, this group usually gets a job first because of maybe who's hiring or who knows? Recessions tend to increase unemployment. That goes without saying. Expansions tend to decrease unemployment. The reason we had some decent unemployment numbers with President Obama and then into President Trump is because the economy was going good, right? Everybody had a job. People were getting hired. Heck, everybody had a wanted help sign outside their window of their business because there's nobody left to hire. Everybody had a job that wanted a job. Now that you see the economy maybe not doing so well in terms of a recession, now, of course, you're seeing that go back up. So again, unemployment numbers do matter. Sometimes they might get overstated or understated, but at the same time, they do make a difference when you're talking about the overall economy. All right, till next time.